We are Odyssey's 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast. I'm Al Sacco with Brian Rennick and Zain Nakvi, and we are beyond excited to get a chance to talk with our guest today. She is NFL Network's analytics expert, and you can see her every Sunday on NFL Network's NFL Game Day morning at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern. She is the one and only Cynthia Frelund. Cynthia, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here, and thank you for your patience. If you see me look to the side, I want your viewers to know I have this new puppy, and I'm becoming this puppy mom, and I'm a little crazy about it. So I'm just a little like, where did he go? What's he doing?
What's he
No
chewing
worries
on?
at all. No worries at all. Cynthia, anytime we have someone who's reached your level in the business, we're always curious about the journey and how you got here. And you have a really interesting background to me, and I want to make sure I get this right. You have your MBA. You worked as a business development manager for Disney ABC TV, a finance analyst for the NFL. You're the first ever analytics expert on NFL Network, and you are all over NFL Network. Tell us a little bit about your career and how you got to this point.
I'm not really sure is the answer. I went to BC, and coming out of undergrad, I thought I would be a doctor. So I started medical school. It wasn't for me. My sister's a doctor. She's the good one. She's done everything right. I was like, I'm going to take a little time off. And then I discovered private equity, which I'm older than a lot of people. So, it was good back then, right? Like it was a good market for that. So I learned a lot about finance and kind of alternative business models and how to value something. I had never even I'm from a small town in Michigan, like that had never crossed my mind as a career. So I started doing that. Then I went back to business school. And then I also added a master's of predictive analytics where I learned how to code because I was very good at the modeling part for finance. So business models, investment bankers often use financial models. So I was like, well, I can do it even more if I learn how to code. So then I cold emailed the CFO of the NFL at the time. His name's Anthony Noto. He now runs SoFi. And he gave me a job for my business school summer. I didn't know what I wanted to do necessarily after. I was a career switcher. That's what, whatever. So business school is great for that. Started working in the NFL, and I started working on a season inventory restructuring project, which was figuring out 16-4, 17-3 games, 18-2. What's the optimal configuration for the product, meaning games? And we ended up netting out in 17-3. Now, this was a long time ago, so it has taken a while for it to come to pass. But learning how to make that model, I learned to talk to a lot of the people on the competition committee, and they were, coaches and former players that have really such deep knowledge of the game. And they're like, you want more teams to be playoff eligible longer, thus more interesting inventory. And you want the quarterbacks to play and the best pass rushers to play. Like, you don't want to be playing with a bunch of backups. You want to be playing with the dudes, So how do you go and take all of this stuff and put it together? And that was where I sort of turned it into sort of more like Moneyball and a little bit less like true finance, because I thought maybe I would do something in finance for sports, but then it was abstract modeling that I really started doing. Then lockout year, Anthony Noto goes back to Goldman Sachs. And then I went to Disney because another project I worked on was a failed joint venture between ESPN Classic and the NFL Network. This is a long time ago, not anywhere in the, this is 2010. So go to Disney, work in, strat planning, do a lot of business, more on the business side, entertainment. This is the longest story ever. It's very boring. I hope all of your audience is by now. Then there's a job that opens up. So I learned kind of more the entertainment side of it. And Disney is a masterful place. Like that is a masterful place to work. Like those people are smart. Then a role opened up in innovation. So I was more on the tech side always because of my coding and my ability to make models. Went to Disney, from Disney to ESPN, also Disney, but just more focused on sports. And then, ESPN, we're working on some pretty cool tech purchasing things. It's boring for another podcast, but and then all of a sudden Paul DePodesta got hired by the Browns, and also DraftKings and FanDuel were becoming more of a thing, and people didn't really understand how this game could be more integrated. They knew there was something there, but they didn't know exactly what was the break point of where it was interesting. And that's where, then I got started. First time on TV was the 6 p.m. Sports Center. And then was terrible. Well, I was terrible. And then, I went back to learn. I was so scared. And I was so scared. And, but it has been really good to watch yourself as I'm sure you guys know from doing this, watching yourself back and listening to your voice, you're like, ugh. And then you get better, right? So I took some improv classes. I learned to get the F over myself and took some voice lessons from people who actually know. I kind of approached it like a student. And then, the rest is sort of history. And in 2016, the NFL was come back home. Let's make this thing that you started at ESPN, like come home to us at the NFL, like this is where you grew up, like come just do it for football. And that was really intriguing for me because football is my favorite. And I mean, it's obviously a more, analytics are a little bit less, and especially in 2016, less defined in football than they are in other sports like baseball.
Well, so I have a couple of things from that. Number one, like my day job is in software engineering. So the fact that like you called it that's awesome. I think that's great. We have to talk shop sometime about that.
Of course.
And the second thing is Moneyball. And like, so you read the bill, you read like the book and you've seen the movie and all that stuff, right? Like you're well versed in that. So, when we're talking about like, before we even get into the 49ers, when we're talking about like, the league in general and the reliance on like metrics and things like that, there are a lot of offenses and quarterbacks that just aren't like efficient at all. Like they're just not very good this year. And that doesn't make my fantasy football team very good either. So for me personally, it has been fun. But what do you think's been the reason there's been so much ugly football this year, like in general around the league, and so many inefficiencies?
I spent a lot of time researching this. Like, I think if you would have told all of us ahead of the season that like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Russell Wilson, all were going to struggle all at the same time, we would have been like, whatever. No, but now that we're looking back and you're like, okay, well, what's causing this? Number one is, it's this confluence of like, there's a lot of big name players who switched teams this season, more so than ever that I've ever studied. So, I mean, maybe back in like the 40s that happened, but I can't go back that far. But, there's more big name players, high importance players that have moved teams. That's the first thing. The second thing, we're now starting to see the net effect of less of the preseason training together and the preseason playing. At first it's like 1 year. Now we're kind of we're steady stream of, after the rules were all changed. Number three, we're seeing a lot of injuries. Perhaps that's tied to number two. I don't really know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't do that. But a lot of big name players have been at least a little banged up, if not very banged up. We're seeing bad O-line play, like O-lines. A lot of O-lines have been, the number of O-lines like that are below the average compared to 10 years prior, is that number's going way up. Perhaps it's something about what's happening in college that's filtering through to the NFL level. And lastly, we're seeing the most coaches with, okay, I have to say this right, because it's not their age that's young, but they have not been calling plays. So the most people who are responsible for play calling are the least experienced, not the youngest, just the least experienced play callers. It's funny we say that this week because it was actually even true before whatever happened with the Colts, right? So, but it was even true before that, right? So it's the lack of experience for the play calling. I don't know if that, I'm not in the buildings with many teams. I do some consulting work with teams, but I'm not with every team. I don't know if the system and schedule that they're running is different, but I can tell you that the people who are in charge of the plays, they have the least experience that we've seen in at least 10 seasons.
Yeah, you mean the 30-year-old first-time play caller for Jeff Saturday's new staff in Indianapolis is bringing down bringing it down again.
Let's be honest. This was actually this was before that. Like this, I was looking into this well before that. It's a lot of people with a lack of experience in real, there's a craft to this. Like, a lot of the coaches have, I can tell you a number of GMs and coaches who have definitely made me cry by telling me that like I'm ruining football or the analytics is stupid and whatever. Aww. But like, I mean, Bill Polian, oh, come on. No, I mean, we're good now. Like, listen, you just got to get through it. It's fine. It's a rite of passage. But, it's like now you're seeing people who, like, these are people's bodies. Like, I don't think you understand, like, do you want Aaron Donald running at you full speed? Like, I know I don't, right? Like, and especially if we don't have like a good plan, we haven't been doing the things, like there's a reason that, you have the certain schedule that you have. Now, is everybody's schedule optimized to be exactly right? No, but you do have, like, there are some things, like you may not like Josh McDaniels as a coach or play. You might not think he's the best coach, but nobody would ever say that he's not done the work to get there. Right? Like, you may not like him or you may not think he's doing an efficient job. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But like the buildup and the number of hours he's done and put in, and like at every step along the way. And he's had incredible success as an offensive play caller. Like, New England, yes, you cannot deny that. So that's what I'm talking. Like, it's a very different thing, right? Like, I worked with Jeff Saturday. He's a very nice man. It's just very tricky to see how that. It just feels, the word I'm going to use is dangerous, because it's like, yeah. I think about how fast those collisions are on the field. Like, do you want Von Miller coming at you? No. Do you want, I mean, Nick Bosa? No, thank you. Like maybe if I put on pads, maybe that would be safe for an opposing quarterback. But even so, I can be very fast at times.
So I actually have one follow-up question. I have
it's a lack of 10,000 hours. I just want to, is that what you're saying? Like just the lack of actual practice.
I mean, right? I think all of those things together, right? I think it's all like the Devontae Adams moving, no matter, like, I'm not even talking about for Aaron Rodgers, that impacts the Raiders. Yes, they played in college together, but there was a little bit ago, you know, like it's not the same as Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. It's been a while. Like, so the point is it's all of these things together. And you have to remember, like, this is like a really, like, it's like a ballet, like it, you know, it's all a choreographed dance. And if you're not doing the right thing, like watch offensive lines against twists this season. They don't know what they're doing. Like watch the first thing that comes to mind, number 70 for the Packers. He's a rookie. And look, that is tough. But a twist, they don't know coming out of college. And now you're protecting Aaron Rodgers when there's no Elton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari hasn't met. Like that seems reckless to me.
Yeah, and there's one thing that you touched on that I do want to actually ask you more about is the perception of analytics kind of like quote unquote ruining the game. And, you know, Al and I love baseball and Brian does as well, right? So there's a lot of that sort of thought process by the purists, I guess, to say like, oh, well, analytics has ruined baseball because it's devalued superstars and made them replaceable. And it's changed the way how defenders shift on the field and things like that. Do you feel like there's any sort of risk of like analytics kind of having that sort of effect in the NFL, not necessarily making it worse, but just drastically changing the game like that? And you know, who knows, it could be a positive or negative effect. We don't know. But do you feel like it could get to that point where it's like that heavily relied upon for most teams? Because you mentioned that you've been run out of a few buildings, right? Unfortunately, like, and that's really unfortunate. But it just like, to me, it seems like there's a lot of dinosaurs that don't want to hop on board, right?
I think there's two things there. The first is the game has to change with the times for a number of reasons, but like health and safety is the number one reason. And as that becomes more of a focal point, and not even just like concussions that we know about, but even like soft tissue injuries and, you know, the things that like these, like you want your hips to work later in your life and like play with your kid, like things like that, right? Like everybody wants the players to play, but everybody also wants the players to be healthy. So I think the game has to evolve. Like, we're getting bigger and stronger. And like I mean, these people are, I did Bill's sideline for the preseason, just trying out some in-game analytics. And I'm standing next to their right tackle. His name is Spencer Brown. He's out of like Northern Iowa. And this kid's like 6'8". And I'm like, we are not the same species. You know, they're getting bigger and faster, and they're, you know, we're becoming, so the first thing is, you know, I think the game has to evolve. Like, I don't know what purists mean. The game just has to evolve. It will. So lean into that and figure out who you want to be in that environment, I think is my first thought. My second thought is I don't even know what analytics means anymore for a lot of people, because it's like thrown out so much that like, I'm not sure what that means, because people have been using quality control and data insights, that whatever you want to call it. Like, you know, like Bill Belichick had a man sit in a room and tell him like tendencies and map and track things to try to get a leg up on their competition. You know, Procter and Gamble does data insight research on the next toothpaste you want to buy. So like, it's really like, it's a different word for like, it's just how you want to, like, if you want to blame something, then you can blame analytics, like fine by me, I whatever. But if you want to try to make good decisions, the point is to acknowledge that like, it's a tool in the tool belt. It's one of the factors that goes in. It's how you use it. To me, it's like, you know, whenever you're talking to players about like their data and stuff, it's like, well, my goal is to figure out how you work best. Like, I want to win football games. Like, if I can figure out like that you do this kind of thing really well, it's not saying you can't do something else well. Like, I'm 5'6". I cannot jump very high. I'm never going to dunk a basketball. I'm never going to do that. But maybe I'm a nasty perimeter shooter. So maybe pair me with someone who can dunk really well. So I have like the right mix and complements of assets, just like Procter and Gamble would go through there. I don't know why I'm stuck on that, but like go through, you know, all the different, like, we need some toothpaste. We need this chip. We need this, whatever. Like, these are our assortments that we want to have because it makes us the most money. He's like, I want the most wins. So I don't think it's something that's like, and on broadcast, you're like, the analytics say, and I'm like, number one, I don't know what the person's internal analytics people are saying for them to do, first. And two, we're in media. So if we're saying like an average of everyone in this situation, you should go for it or not, then present it as such. But then say, but we know that this Chiefs team is so much more efficient passing than they are running. So blah, 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 blah. Like, just say like, here's the average. And it's likely that the Chiefs are above the average on this, or, you know, for the Niners, it's like, we know that outside zone rushing, like, there's something about Kyle Shanahan, like he like puts his finger on a player and they're amazing at it, like whatever it is, right? Like, you know, so you have to recognize like the profile of the Niners offense and the profile of the Chiefs offense, that's going to look different. It just is. So if you say, okay, the analytics, like our media model says that the average would be here, but we're the Niners and running usually works better again, like whatever, like just editorialize it where it makes sense instead of just being like the analytics say. No one liked math class growing up. They're not going to like it now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that actually leads really well into the next question. And when we talk about the modern NFL and we talk about efficiency, a lot of what the experts in analytics, right? And that's a catch-all now, right? We just talked about what does that mean, but those that really study the game, we talk about like the Warren Sharps, right? Where they're really diving down into the data and really kind of parsing it out. And they talk about the relative inefficiency of the running game and how a lot of the modern NFL has shifted more towards, a passing league, also because the rules are a little bit more lax. But you see a team like the 49ers, which is the team that we talk about, and they've spent so much capital on the running back position, including this year with the trade for Christian McCaffrey. And do you feel like there has become almost a blind spot in the efficiency metrics for the running game to the point where maybe the 49ers are starting to exploit that a little bit? Or do you genuinely or generally believe that it is far more efficient to have an excellent passing offense than it is to have an excellent running offense?
So I'm going to borrow an adage from business, and I'm going to say there's only two sustainable sources of true competitive advantage. The first one is to be the low-cost provider. And in this case, that would mean, you get a quarterback that's on a rookie deal. You have a lot of, these key positions. You're in a good spot. Maybe you have a quarterback and a pass rusher on a rookie deal. So then you don't have to be paying these higher profile, higher cost things. Okay, that's one way for an advantage. The other way for an advantage is to develop a niche and to own that niche with every ounce of your being, right? And that is what I think that the Niners are at least trying, and it seems like pretty successfully doing. And they're creating that niche because, and I would say if I was talking to Kyle, I'd be like, great, like, tell me what you want in this running back and tell me where you're willing to sacrifice something else. Meaning you can't have, no one can. We have a cap and a floor. That's the way that our game is played, right? So if you want to have the excellent runners and you want to pay them this, and this is because, like, is Christian McCaffrey really a running back? Like, I don't really know, right? Like, I don't know what I would call him, right? So if you want to have that, then you need to, maybe you're overpaying for, or maybe you're underpaying for your second tight end, but you only want him to block. You don't need him to catch pass, etc. Like, there's trade-offs. So it's really it's masterfully putting together the trade-offs to make your system and the plays that you want to run have those many of the assets that make that happen. So you have a sustainable niche that differentiates you from your competitors and therefore gives you an advantage. There's only two ways you can win, in my opinion, in business and in football.
Nice. Cynthia, I'm curious your take on the team as a whole, because the Niners kind of drive their fan base crazy during the regular season because they're really inconsistent. And this year is no different. They're 4-4, but still considered a Super Bowl contender, especially, in the wide open NFC. Where do you think San Francisco is? And do you think they can make another deep run in the playoffs this year based on what you've seen?
I do. Actually, the head of the season, even with some questions at quarterback, I had them as a wild card, not winning the division. So I got that one wrong, but I think they'll win the division. I'm going to be honest. I think in the NFC in general, there's a lot of, this one could be one of those weird, like, we could have the version of the Cincinnati Bengals from last season, make it for the NFC this season. Cause, like, who knows who's even good in the NFC? Like, what are we even looking at? Right. So even if the Niners Bucks, maybe like I feel confident saying both of those teams have some things that I think are good, because even though I've seen some weird play from the Bucks and they're tied with the Falcons for the whatever. So there's a lot of question marks, and I know the Eagles are very good, but the point is, it's very interesting to see the difference between, what you think of in like about the AFC, where like the Bills and the Chiefs, like you feel like, okay, like both of those teams are probably 1A, 1B, right? So when I'm looking to see the situation for the Niners, like this feels like a very good Niners team that, the only time I saw them play poorly was when like the entire defense wasn't playing. And this feels like I kind of like, I love to fake hate that like Kyle, like he doesn't owe us anything. He doesn't give us anything, right? Like he says the funniest stuff. Like, we don't even know if we're going to be here Sunday. Like, okay, well, true, we don't, but let's hope we're here Sunday, right? Like, so it feels very much like this feels like a very Ninersy, like I will see you in Glendale situation.
And then before we finish up, you're involved with the non-for-profit Bright Pink. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think that the best thing anyone can do, especially like, we all know early prevention, detection, cancer, it is a massive, massive deal. I have a firsthand experience, and Bright Pink is actually focused on women's health. So breast and ovarian cancer, early detection, screening, and education. It's not about like anything else. It's about taking some responsibility and owning your ability to know about your risks, your risk factors, what you can do, and how you can help yourself through education. So it's a great, and they pair you with mentors, and there's a lot of really wonderful ways to kind of, especially if anyone, and how many of us don't know someone who's had to deal with some fallout from one of those two cancers. It really helps families support the whole thing. It's all about education. Here's your resources. You can learn about this. You can make your own decisions in anything you want to do.
Cynthia, you are the best. We are huge fans, and we cannot thank you enough for the time.
I just talked for like the entire time. I'm sorry. I'm like, would you like?
That's why we had you on.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I know.
awesome.
That's so much. So, and I mean, the dog. I feel like you have to see him. He's now upside down. Look at him.
Yes.
So cute.
Yes.
Gordy.
Oh, so cute.
He kind of makes out with lamb chop. We're gonna have to talk about that later. But whatever.
He's young. He's young.
He's just young.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Have a great
Awesome.
day.
Thank you, Cynthia. Have a good one.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.
All right, you guys, awesome guest. And I want to say thank you to NFL Network, who has been wonderful to us the last 5 years. They've worked with us constantly, and, we're huge fans of Cynthia, so we were excited to get her. So very cool interview. All right, guys, but we do have to move on. And the big news, I think, for the Niners today, it's just a gut punch, man, with this Jason Verrett stuff. And we've seen what he's capable of on the field. When he's just a terrific corner when he plays, but his injuries, he's just been riddled by injuries. It's one thing after another. He just tore his Achilles after coming back from ACL. And we had hoped this year it's going to be Mosley and Ward. And then when Verrett comes back, my God, this cornerback group is the best we've seen the Niners have. And I don't know, maybe ever. God knows how long. But now Mosley's out. There's no Verrett. And now it's Ward. And then we got to see what happens. So this was tough. This was tough to hear.
Yeah. I mean, for me, outside of football, the first thing I thought of was Jason Verrett, like just the man, right? And I hesitate to say, like, I feel so bad for him because it just sounds like some sympathy or whatever, but like genuinely, this man has torn an ACL 3 times and now torn an Achilles twice, along with a torn labrum early in his career, an ankle injury. Like the number of surgeries and rehabs that this guy has gone through since being drafted. Zain, you and I were trying to figure out when he was drafted prior to going live, and you said he was a part of the 2014 NFL draft.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
2016, 2017, 2018, all 3 of those seasons ended on IR. 2021 and now 2022. There's only been 2 seasons in his career that hasn't ended in IR. That was 2015 when he made it to the Pro Bowl, and then 2020 when he arguably should have made it to the Pro Bowl with the 49ers. The only 2 seasons that he hasn't ended the season on IR. And you just feel, like I said, you feel awful for for the person of Jason Verrett, and genuinely hope that he heals up. It feels like this is probably it for him. I would assume. I mean, I can't imagine rehabbing as hard as he has to get back from that ACL just to tear an Achilles, try and rehab that and come back. It just feels like his body's like, listen, we can't do this at the level that you want us to do it. And so, but yeah. And then on the football side, like you said, Al, the depth that was there is gone now. And so now you are relying on likely Jimmy Ward in the slot for probably the rest of the year, with Tayshaun Gibson still manning the free safety. And then Diamador Lenore, Ambry Thomas, Samuel Womack, Dante Johnson. Like, you're probably just going to cycle through these guys until one of them really kind of establishes themselves. And I don't know who that will be. I hope Womack gets an opportunity. That's where he played in college. I know they like Lenore. Maybe, and maybe what it is eventually you get somebody out there so you can kick Lenore back down and you can put Jimmy Ward back at free safety, which is arguably where he's best. But it definitely makes the secondary less impressive and arguably less effective than they were, prior to that Mosley injury.
Yeah, and I think that it puts even more importance on the health of the defensive line now as well, because they need to be able to get to the quarterback and they need to be able to convert a lot of these pressures into sacks. And the Jason Verrett thing, man. Yeah, Brian, like we were talking about it before the show or off air. And I just, like, psychologically as a person, how that must feel. He spent the last 6 years, a good portion of the last 6 years, rehabbing from major injuries, like learning how to walk again injuries, literally, when he's torn those 3 ACLs and then 2 Achilles. Like, it's just so gutting. And you hate to see that with anybody, but it hits extra with the Niners, right? Because, like, we cover them and this is our team and this is our favorite team and cheer for them. But I mean, like, that aside, all of that put into like one, like, just combine all of that, it makes it hurt even more, because it hurts on every level. It hurts the team. It hurts him. I think that, yeah, at this point, like, his body's just, hey, we gotta do something else now. Hopefully he's been able to save up a lot of money from his contracts in the NFL. I just don't know if he can continue. And I would love it if he could play, because when he's on, he plays at a Pro Bowl level, but I just don't know. Like, Richard Sherman had the torn Achilles too. And after that, he was never the same. So it's one of those things where for a cornerback, that's like the death blow for your career almost, especially at this point, 30 years old. And he only has 40 starts, right? Like, that's the crazy thing. He's playing in 40 games over the course of 6 years. But that being said, like, all those major injuries, I just don't see him coming back from that. And what they do now going forward, like, this was kind of like the fallback plan, right? For the 49ers, like, all right, well, Verrett's coming back and he'll be on the outside and they'll ease him into action and it'll be okay. And now all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. And what I would love, they're not going to do it, but what I would love is to have Womack back in the slot where he started the season and was very successful, by the way, in the slot. Mm-hmm. And you kick Jimmy Ward outside and you let him play outside, because he's much better outside than he is in the slot. So, and Jimmy Ward hates the slot. Like, anytime you hear him talk about playing the slot, he's kind of like, oh, I'll just do whatever the team wants me to do. Yeah, he seems like reluctant to do it. So it's just like, I'm just so gutted for Jason Verrett. So sad for him. And from a team perspective, it's just a huge blow.
But we got to move on. The season is moving on, and the Niners are in pretty good shape, I think, going into the second half with the game against the Chargers, who, listen, they have issues. Chargers have a lot of issues right now with Herbert being hurt. He just doesn't look right to me.
All their receivers.
Mike Williams, Keenan Allen have been hurt. They just lost their nose tackle. They're giving up tons of yardage on the ground. We'll get into some of those stats. This is a big game for them. And like Cynthia mentioned, the NFC, anybody could make the Super Bowl, I think, really, in the NFC. And it's crazy. One thing, Brian, you put up something today that I saw. Something can derail the Niners offense with all this talent right now. We always talk about mistakes, right? If it's the self-inflicted wounds, the penalties, but you put up something today about EPA impact from drop passes in 2020. Did you want to hit on that, or you want me to? Do you have it up right now? Because I thought,
I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up. So this is the graphic that I saw. and it's EPA impact from drop passes. So essentially, what the line on the bottom is number of points lost due to drops. And as you can see, the Bucks lead the NFL, not something you want to lead in almost 55 points that they've left out there because of their 23 drops. And then the 49ers are right there at 45 points. So we've talked a lot about the lack of scoring from this offense. And you could see that this offense could have had 45 more points through week 8 without those drops, which are at 20. And a lot of those, I think, come from Juwan Jennings. And so we talked a little bit.
Deebo Samuel's got
and Deebo Samuel has some as well. But we talked a little bit last episode about the idea of possibly bringing on an OBJ, and arguably that's where I think you could see the biggest impact. I still think that a more impactful signing would be Ndamukong Suh on that D line, especially with Kinlaw likely possibly not returning this season. Not that that's been announced, but it's hard to count on him. So, but the drops have got to stop. And, I think if we don't see them stop, right, I don't know that they can make noise in the playoffs. And so to me, part of the solution could be OBJ, and from everything that we're seeing now, granted, it is what it is, but it sounds like it's really probably going to come down to the Cowboys and the 49ers. So, who wants them more? And if you're OBJ, do you want to join the offense that you essentially already ran last year with the Rams, or, do you want to try and learn a new one? So, but yeah, 45 points off of drops. That's a lot. This offense can't afford to be losing that level of production because they can't keep their hands on the ball.
Yeah, and Juwan Jennings had his 4 drops and a 20% drop rate. Doesn't have a ton of targets. Deebo Samuel has 7 drops, a 13% drop rate. This is all according to Pro Football Reference. And Deebo's on pace for like 14 drops this year. He had 10 last year, and he was Superman last year. So he makes up for it in other ways. But we have seen the Niners, we talk about they're not scoring points, and it is those self-inflicted wounds. So if there's anything that can slow them down in the second half offensively, I definitely think that's it.
Do you guys feel like they drop a lot of passes just because they're thrown into really tight windows and there's always defenders around?
No.
Some of them, but not all of them.
I mean, yeah, sometimes, but overall, no. I mean, we've seen Charlie Warner drop.
Well, I mean, there's the wide open drops. Yeah, I mean, there's those, but I feel like being throwing into tight windows does have a little bit to do with it, and because they throw so much into tight windows, like naturally their drop rate might be a little bit higher. But that being said, like, look, if it's in your catch radius, you got to, you're an NFL receiver, you got to catch it. And if you're going to get lit up, I mean, I understand, like, okay, some guys, they don't like that. Nobody likes that. But that being said, like, there have been times where, like you said, they've been wide open and they've dropped like game-changing passes, and you just can't do that.
Right.
So OBJ, does he fix that? I mean, sure, right? He has to get the targets. He has to get open. It helps, but he has to get open too, right? He has to get open, and whether Kyle wants to scheme stuff up for him or not, if he's coming here, we'll see. Also, Michael Irvin was, I believe, the one that kind of suggested the Cowboys and Niners, I guess he was one of them. I saw that he mentioned that those would be the 2 destinations. Also, the Cowboys are really stupid because they just had Amari Cooper and they gave him away, and now they're looking at Odell Beckham. So Cowboys are stupid. F the Cowboys.
OBJ is a lot cheaper. than Cooper, though.
That's true. Yeah. But you get more production out of Cooper than you will out of OBJ at this point in their career, right?
All right. So everybody knows I'm a wet blanket, right? So we talked about it last time. Like, if I'm always going to think about what goes wrong and this team's got to prove it to me, and I'm not going to go back on that. Having said that, I think this is a really good matchup for the Niners coming up against the Chargers. Niners are going to want to run the ball. They have McCaffrey. They're going to have Mitchell back, it looks like. The Chargers are giving up 5.7 yards per attempt this season. This just feels like a game where the Niners can just do whatever the hell they want to running the ball and keep Justin Herbert and not that the offense has been terrific lately there anyway, but keep the offense on the sidelines and just, I'm not going to ever say it's going to be easy because it never is, but I feel like this is a really good matchup for the Niners to get a win and maybe hopefully get things rolling in the second half.
Yeah, the Chargers are 29th in rush defense DVOA. They're not good. It's the Achilles heel of their entire defense. Their defense just hasn't been that good this season either. And here's the other thing. Justin Herbert is great. I love Justin Herbert, arguably one of my favorite players in the NFL. Doesn't have anyone to throw to outside of Austin Eckler. Mm-hmm. And so as a defense, as a 49ers defense, you look at that offense, which hasn't been great this season anyway. Their offensive coordinator should be arrested for malpractice for what he's done to Justin Herbert. But outside of that, I don't think there's anything that really scares you about this Chargers offense outside of Justin Herbert, which great. But again, no one to throw to. And so I don't even know if they have to worry about keeping him off the field that much, but I think they will, because I think they're going to run the ball 40 times, and I think Elijah Mitchell will be back for this game, which means you've got McCaffrey and Mitchell and TDP, right? Here's the one thing. I'll take Al's wet blanket and I'll throw it out there. Under Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers are 1-5 after the bye.
Is that real? Seriously?
1-5. Yeah.
Really?
After the bye.
No way.
Wow. I did not know that.
Was the one win in 2019 or was it one of the other years?
Yeah. I believe it was 2019.
Wow.
Yep.
Man.
You know me, I have to look that up now. I'm definitely gonna look that up later. That's so common for our listeners for coming from me.
So there's that, right? So there's that, which is inexplicable. How do you? I don't understand that. But regardless, I do think that I just think there's just a ton of momentum coming off that Rams victory, and with all these players coming back after the bye from injury, I just think there's too much for this team not to come out. And to be perfectly honest, I think they're going to blow the Chargers out of the water. That's my prediction. And we'll have a score prediction later, but I think they're gonna put it on the Chargers this week. I really do.
This is one of those games where you see something, and I'm glad that we had Cynthia on earlier to talk about analytics and statistics and stuff. And this is one of those games where you look at the stats and they tell you the whole story about the Chargers defense, and they tell you why they're so bad. And it's because they can't stop the run. And I hope that Kyle looks at that and is basically like, look, we're not going to make any secret of it this week. We've got, hopefully Juszczyk has been practicing. He's going to play as well. Hopefully he's been practicing. So you've got hopefully Juszczyk coming back. You've got Elijah Mitchell coming back. Christian McCaffrey gets the full bye week install. And now you can actually run the ball with the guys that you need to run the ball. So I hope that he looks at this and says that we're going to run the ball 40 times. I do not hope that he looks at this and says, hey, look, we're going to throw the ball 30 plus times to Jimmy because they'll be expecting us to run. So that should open up things in the past. I hope that he doesn't overcomplicate this. That's one of Kyle's really, that's one of my pet peeves with him is that he does overcomplicate things. I hope it keeps it simple. Run the ball 40 times. You're going to win the game. Just run the ball down their throat. Even if it's 2 or 3 yards a pop, it doesn't matter. Wear that defense down. They're not very good. Control the clock. Limit Justin Herbert's opportunities. I mean, say what you want to say about who has to throw. He's still a very good quarterback. And despite the fact that, he doesn't have Keenan Allen and he hasn't had him the entire season, and Eckler's their only real threat. This is one of those games where it's it almost feels like a trap game. And I know that's kind of disingenuous to say to the Chargers, but it feels like a trap game to me. And the Niners can't play down to an inferior opponent, and they should blow them out of the water. Will they? We'll see.
Yeah, and
I have to correct myself. 2-3. My apologies, because he hasn't even been here This is his 6th season. 2-3. 2019 and 2020 are when he won. Lost in 17, 18, and last season. Last season was that Colts game.
So for Justin Herbert, and again, you got to feel for this guy, kind of what he's going through. Not only is his coaching terrible, but you said his last game he threw 43 passes. And his targets went to, Austin Eckler, who's a good player, had 8 targets. Josh Palmer had 10. Gerald Everett, who's a tight end, had 8. Michael Bandy, whoever the hell that is, had 8. DeAndre Carter had 6.
Sacramento State legend DeAndre Carter. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And Sony Michel had 1. So he doesn't have many people to throw to. And Herbert's numbers lately, we brought it up last show when we were talking about does your QB suck? And we said Justin Herbert does not suck, and he doesn't, but he's playing right now. He's struggling. Listen to these yards per attempt in his last, what is this, 4 games? So 6.71.
This is going to be ugly.
It's so ugly. 6.71, 4.18. He had 57 attempts for 238 yards against Denver, who's a good defense.
Yikes.
5.75 against Seattle, 51 attempts, only 293 yards. And 5.70 against the Falcons. That's really bad. I mean, that's just kind of pedestrian. And I don't even think he's really throwing the ball. I think everything is just underneath. They're just having to throw these little 8-yard passes. He hasn't been running, and maybe he's protecting his ribs. But yeah, I just hope for Justin Herbert's sake that I know they're 5-3, hopefully 5-4 after this week. I hope they get him a real coach next year. Like, that'd be a good place for Sean Payton to go. I don't know if he'll want to go work for the Chargers. That organization's a little suspect, but he'd be a great coach to help Herbert. I hope Herbert gets, because he could be, I don't know how to say Mahomes and Allen, but he could maybe be right underneath there. He's certainly talented enough to be like those guys. He has that kind of talent, but he can be a top 5 QB in the league. He just needs better things around him.
Lombardi is trying to run the Sean Payton offense with Justin Herbert. So he's not succeeding at it. And that's the thing, is Justin Herbert is not Drew Brees, and they're running this offense like they've got a 6 foot, a 6 foot quarterback with a average arm, when they've got a 6'6" quarterback with a friggin' howitzer attached to his shoulder. Like, let's move the ball downfield, guys. What are we doing? Again, I hope they don't figure that out this week, but I would love for Justin Herbert's sake for them to figure that out relatively quickly. I've also got a good buddy who's a Chargers fan. I hope for him that they get it figured out as well.
Yeah, and really quickly about Justin Herbert, when the Niners drafted Trey, we kind of hoped for that same sort of like ascension in terms of like being able to come in and right away make an impact and make a positive impact. But Justin Herbert was really experienced college quarterback. He had over 40 starts, right? So he came into the league with a good amount of experience. And I think that and not to take it on a tangent, but like whenever a quarterback is drafted, like he's the one they kind of like look at. They don't necessarily look at Mahomes and Allen. They look at like, oh, Justin Herbert, like this guy came and people didn't think that he would do much. And all of a sudden, like he's like 2 was drafted ahead of him. And like all of a sudden now, like he's a superstar, but it's like, well, he had a good college career and a lot of experience in college. So I think that all of that stuff kind of encapsulated and it is encapsulated into what he is now. But I think that, yeah, like he needs a coach, and you see the importance of coaching. We talked about it last show. Like the coach is a bozo, and when you have a good coach, like if you gave Mike McDaniel Justin Herbert, like I mean, look what he's done with Tua, and I'm not saying Tua is terrible, but Justin Herbert
could have had Justin Herbert.
They could have, right? So again, problems that they're not going to figure out this week. Problems for another year, but I really think that the Niners should and will win this game.
And I think they will. And I'm going to pick them. I'm going to pick the Niners this week. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to hit 30 points. Go. I think it's going to be a good game. And if they lose and they don't hit 30 points, I will not pick them again the rest of the season. Damn it!
Oh no!
Oh, yeah, it's on record. It's on record.
I think this game's going to be like 31-17. I do, and I think it's going to be a pretty easy game for the Niners. I just think they're going to, because I think we're going to be able to run the ball so well that it's not going to put them in situations where Jimmy's going to have to Jimmy, and Jimmy will probably have to throw 20 passes in this game, I think, because I think they're just going to be able to run the hell out of the ball. So I like the Niners this week a lot. I do.
Go ahead, Zain.
So I'm going to pick them in as well. And I feel like we're not going to get a contradiction, Brian. I don't think we are, but I'm going to pick the Niners, and I think they're going to dominate. A lot of Niners are going to show up to Levi's. And it's been a couple of weeks since they've been back home, and it's going to be rocking. It's a night game. And I think that, they realize that they're in a good spot, even though Seattle's ahead of them. I think they realize that they kind of control their own destiny, because I don't believe in Seattle. I think they're going to fizzle out because Geno Smith will not continue that play where he is. So I think the Niners know they have an opportunity here to keep up pace. They need to win, but I think they know if they go on a run here, last week, we talked about the next 4 games or so, all winnable games. They can stack some wins here. It'll start here with the Chargers.
You have a score?
31-17. They're going to score.
I was going to say, which would make it a trifecta. Al said 31-17. You said 31-17. I was going to say 31-17 before Al stole it. I can't believe that our wet blanket is picking the 49ers in a blowout. I do think it's going to be a blowout. I don't think that this Chargers offense is going to be able to do much against this 49ers defense. The linebacking trio is going to be back. Hopefully Armstead will be back. I'm not sure. I don't actually think he will. I don't know that it would make much of a difference. The Chargers aren't a great running team. You will have to see what happens, in the secondary. But again, there's really not anybody that scares you as a pass catcher on that Chargers squad right now that's healthy, because I don't think Keenan Allen's going to play. I don't believe Mike Williams is going to play. So really, again, you're looking at Joshua Palmer and again, Sac State legend, Stingers up, DeAndre Carter. But I'm going to say the Chargers don't get to 17. I'm going to say 13. So I'm going to say, you guys said 31. I'll go 33-13, San Francisco 49ers, and keep the trend alive. I've picked them every week, right? Obviously I thought they were going to go undefeated this season if I've picked them every game, but I put out an article on the Web Zone today. I got my author hat on, which has been a while, for some bold predictions. And I think the 49ers are going to go 7-2 down the stretch. And here's the first one. And I also predicted that Christian McCaffrey was going to be the first 1,000-yard rusher under Kyle Shanahan, which doesn't sound too bold because he's at like 400 yards right now. But my bold prediction was that he gets 1,000 yards on the ground as a 49er.
Yeah, I was going to say it doesn't count if he gets 1,000.
Yeah, I said as a 49er, which as it stands right now, he needs to average 99 yards a game through the last 9 to get there. So we'll see. But
also,
but yeah,
33
today,
points.
Yeah, 33.
Right.
Let's go.
So it's 4 touchdowns, a field goal, and a safety.
I'm going to say because this team tends to stall out in the red zone, and I think early on that will happen. So it's going to be a Robbie Gould. If you've got Robbie Gould on your fantasy team, I think he'll do good this week.
They're scoring 7 times. You heard it here first, people, from Brian Rennick. 7 scores for the Niners this week. All right, we'll see what happens. Thanks again to Cynthia Frelund. Awesome interview. We're great to have her. Let's see if the Niners can get it rolling. Brian and Zain, this is Al.
Later.